I think our next question comes from somebody who's anonymous, Paula, which means we get to give her a name. Ooh. We get to name her. We get the naming rights to this caller.
The naming rights. Wow. Wow. All right.
Yes. And if we pivoted back to movies, are we back on movies?
No, you know what? I think I want to do something a little bit more on brand.
Oh, we're going to shake it up.
Ooh. Madame C.J. Walker is the first female self-made millionaire in the United States. So, and if you want to give it a movie tie-in, apparently she will also be honored in Barbie's line of inspiring women dolls.
That's fabulous.
Madame C.J. Walker, first female self-made millionaire. Self-made is kind of a loaded term because, people rightfully point out like nobody is ever truly, no man is an island. But first generation millionaire or, millionaire through effort rather than through
inheritance.
Yeah, inheritance or, gift. Yeah. So I think first generation millionaire is maybe the most accurate. I don't know. I don't know what alternate term people can use besides self-made, knowing how loaded that term is.
But there's got to be a better one.
Yeah, exactly. Why people like really reacted badly to the phrase self-made was when Forbes referred to Kylie Jenner as a self-made billionaire.
Oh, I remember that.
And everyone's like, yeah, like there is no comparison between Kylie Jenner versus someone like Sarah Blakely, right? Sarah Blakely is truly self-made. She started out with nothing and sold boxes. She had like a stack of boxes in an apartment in Atlanta where she worked from her kitchen table to sell like the first prototypes of Spanx. She is genuinely self-made versus like Kylie Jenner. Come on.
Sister's already paving the way for her from a family that has a ton of money already.
Yeah, exactly.
It doesn't mean she didn't work hard, though. Because one thing that drives me crazy is when somebody puts some stank on somebody who does have some privilege and they had a pedestal. And they go, well, they had this and they had, but then you actually look at what that person does with that privilege and they still work their ass off. We had that at American Express. We had a woman who was a fantastic advisor. She was in Seattle, Washington, and her dad was a Boeing executive. And so all I heard over and over was, well, her dad was a Boeing executive, and as these people retired, she would get them all as clients, and she'd roll over the big pension and the 401k money, and she was just... And so people but then I met her. Her systems were amazing, Paula. The way she treated her clients was amazing. The referrals she got was amazing. So yeah, maybe her dad was a Boeing exec and worked with all these other people, but she actually took that and made it her own thing.
Right. Because sometimes you see the opposite happen. You see people squander.
I think more often you see people squander it. Far more often.
And you see them squander it quickly. So you can see exactly what it looks like when... I was thinking about that this morning, actually, because I joined this gym. It's like a gym that does kettlebell workouts, right? And
I'm out.
And it's $30 a class, right? That's expensive. That is freaking expensive. But I was thinking about it, and I was like, if you see, because the instructors are like super fit, and I'm like, if you see somebody who is that fit, do you say, wow, they have the money to pay for a kettlebell class? Or do you say, wow, they showed up for the class and swung some kettlebells? Yeah. Right?
Yeah, because the easy thing to say is I can go buy a kettlebell and avoid the $30.
Well, no, where I'm going with that is, it is true that there are people who do not have the money to take a kettlebell class, but that does not negate the effort of the people who have the money but chose to spend it on that kettlebell class rather than sleeping in.
I guess that was also my point, is that there are people I know who will buy the weight set, but they never use it. They will buy
Mm.
the whatever. I mean, this is the problem I have when people talk about, my big platform is surround yourself with smart people. Get
Right.
the thing, take the class, take the course, be around the people, do whatever. And I will meet people all the time who go, I don't really need to spend that money. Not before I had money, I had to find ways to still get in those rooms, but being in those rooms is the key to my success. And now I will pay to be in those rooms, because without being in that room, Paula, I know I won't do the kettlebell workout. I could buy all the kettlebells I wanted to. I could fill my house with kettlebells and I won't lift one. But if I got to show up at 6 a.m. on a random Tuesday for the workout, you better believe I'll be there. I will be there.
Right. Exactly. Exactly. Yeah, there's a quote from Oscar Wilde: a cynic is a man who knows the price of everything and the value of nothing.
Yes.
So,
Yeah, that's good.
so, with that lengthy intro,
Here's CJ.
here's CJ. Yes.
Hi, Paula and Joe. Thank you so much for taking my call, and thank you so much for everything that you do for this community. I have learned so much from listening to this podcast. So, my question is, I'm currently in the market to buy my very first home. I'm in Southern California, so it's definitely been challenging being one income, and just the market has been crazy. But I'm finally in escrow. The house is $510,000, and I plan to put in 5% down so I can have more money towards repairs because it's a fixer upper. I currently have some money in a brokerage account. I have approximately $300,000 in it. And I'm wondering, should I sell some of those assets so I can put it towards the mortgage? Just because my monthly payment for the mortgage with property taxes and all the fees will run me approximately almost $4,000, which is the max that I can really afford. I can continue to contribute to my 401k, but aside from any other savings, I probably won't be able to do it because of such a high mortgage. So, if you were me, would you let the funds continue to grow in the brokerage account out in the market, or would you put it towards your mortgage so you can have a little bit more free money every month? Thanks. Looking forward to your advice.
CJ, thanks so much for that question. And Paula, this is where I think another one of our broadening out of the questions happens, because here's the thing, CJ, from where I sit, and I'd love, Paula, to hear your take on this, but just the realization that no goal that you have exists in a vacuum. What she decides here is going to affect another goal. If she takes the money out of that brokerage account, that money was ostensibly slated for some other goal, and now it's going into the house. And so then it transforms the nature of that money. So my first question is always, before she does anything, if she takes the money out of the brokerage account, which sounds like what she wants to do, and maybe what she probably should do, how does that affect the goal of what that money was already there for? And will she need to find a strategy then to somehow replace that money if it creates a shortfall in an area she really cares about later? So the real answer might be a two-step. It might be take the money out, but then adopt a side hustle that's going to earn X amount of money that she knows, based on compounding, is going to still get her to a goal that she was on track for and now is behind to. Do you see what I mean?
Essentially, you're saying that money's got to come from somewhere. So if she takes it out of,
Yeah. It's kind of the Stephen Covey. If you pick up one end of a stick, there's another end that you pick up with it, right? So my initial thought process is, what's on the other end of that stick? Well, there's another goal at the end of that stick, and if she takes the money out, like as an example, a different example, when people decide, well, I'm going to put 5% of my money into my 401k. I used to ask, when I would go to companies, I'd say, how'd you decide on 5%? And you know what they'd always say? It's what I can afford. And my question was, well, that's great today because it meets your goal today. But the other end of that stick is, where is 5% going to get you later? You may very comfortably be not reaching any goal, right? You're super comfortable today and you're not getting there. So the first question is, what do I need to do? And then, can I afford to do it? And if I can't afford to do it, then what's the thing I need to do instead? So my advice probably is, because it sounds like it's gonna be so tight at $4,000 a month. I didn't ask, she didn't tell us about her entire budget, but I'm assuming that $4,000 is a big chunk of money for her budget. And if that is the case, then taking the money out of the budget, out of the brokerage account, makes sense. But I would then ask myself, what's on the other end of that now isn't being funded?
Right. Like, is the thing that I'm most curious about, is that brokerage account meant to be a supplemental retirement account?
Yeah.
Like, is that, because if it is, then I would very much hesitate to take money out of it. I'm firmly of the belief that if there's money that you are specifically setting aside, and when I say retirement, that's what I mean is money for future you at age 65 or older, right? Which is distinct from your occupational status. So when I say retirement, I'm not referring to an occupational status. That's just a shorthand term for once you are over the age of 65, when you are more likely to have, speaking frankly, you're more likely to have health problems that might preclude you from being able to work, even if you wanted to, right? And so you want to create some type of a safety net for the septuagenarian version of yourself. I'm very much of the mind that if you have money that is meant for age 65 plus you shouldn't touch that. And often people will put money in a brokerage account as a supplement to what they've put into a 401k or an IRA. If that's the purpose of the brokerage account, I wouldn't touch it. But if the brokerage account doesn't have a purpose, or if it was going to be like a travel fund.
One of my favorite things to do, Paula, is to run what if scenarios. What if? And here's a what if scenario. What if that money has always been meant for above age 65, after age 65. So it is in that pot of money, but she's invested it over the last 10 years. It did really well until last year, right? So she made a bunch of money, but that didn't set her back the whole 10 years.
How do you know she didn't get bet it all on NVIDIA in January?
Then take it out now. Please take it out now. Yes. If she did it 2 years ago, take it out now. But you're right. Assuming it's broadly diversified in a stock-based index kind of portfolio, if that's the case, she might be, even if she takes that money out, Paula, let's say that the what if scenario shows she could take out $40,000 and she's still going to be okay after age 65. Does that change your thinking?
Man, I would need to see it in the context of the entire retirement plan. There's the math of it and there's the principle of it. And as a principle, if money is designated for 65 plus you, future you, as a principle, I don't like touching it because it's so easy to be flippant about the age 65 plus version of ourselves. To think that day is so far into the future that we don't need to worry about it. And then you turn 50 or you turn 55 and you're like, oh, that's around the corner, right? So as a principle, I'm not a fan of it. In practice, though, in mathematical practice, of course, when you're gaming out how much you're going to have for retirement, as you know, Joe, there isn't one scenario. There's a range of scenarios. So if she runs a range of scenarios And in the most conservative range, where she gets hit with sequence of returns risk, and she gets hit, she just gets hit with like, we have Japan's economy from now until she retires. And then at that point, she gets hit with sequence of returns risk, right? And she's still okay. All right, fine. At that point, you've modeled such a worst case scenario that there's room to spare.
The frustration that I always had was that there's two different types of people. There are people that aren't saving anywhere near enough money, and there are people that are saving gobs and gobs and gobs of money for a future that they will never experience. They're oversaving. So for those people in principle, I always wanted to lighten them up. Let's get used to flexing this spend muscle a little bit. And I've told the story here before about the gentleman that thought that he had a terminal disease. So he all of a sudden decided he was going to take these wonderful trips. And then he got a second opinion and he found out that he didn't have a terminal disease. And he immediately went back to work, even though he didn't need the money, and his family's going to be okay. And I felt so bad for his spouse, who was so excited that he was finally going to loosen up. But it's so hard for us to change our behavior. Somebody who's been a saver their whole life, Paul, as you know, isn't going to turn into a spender overnight. And for him, just seeing the fact that, I can make more money, just this thing in his head was very frustrating. So for me, the principle's not as strong because I've seen too many of those people that are going to have way more money than they'll have life. And I'd love for them to have more life. But to your point about sequence of returns, Japan's economy, which for people don't know has been like a 0% return forever. The thing that you always want to do when you're doing these what if scenarios, these models, is divide it by 2 or sometimes even by 3, meaning if I'm going to be okay using a regular scenario, let's say I get 6 or 7% on my money, and I'm going to be okay, and I've got $40,000 left over. I may then take 20,000 of the 40 and put it toward the mortgage and leave the other 20, or take a half or a third of what is going to be excess money toward that goal. So it's money that I'm sure that if I do need it, it's way at the end of my life. And it's only half of what's my projected surplus.
Yeah. The other thing to bear in mind, and of course, I never, ever, I'm going to caveat this, never always run the numbers with the interest rates that exist, not with what you hope future interest rates might be. But that said, if, let's say 2 years from now or 3 years from now, once we are firmly out of the inflation danger zone, if at that point inflation rates go down, CJ, at that point, you can refinance that property, lower your interest rate, and substantially lower your monthly payments. So that $4,000 payment that you're making, the good news actually is that the current high interest rate environment is, in some ways, forcing you to buy less house than you otherwise would have if you'd bought like 2, right?
Yeah.
And what that means is that 2 or 3 years from now, hopefully, if interest rates decline and you refinance, you'll have a much more doable monthly payment, like a much easier monthly payment. And you'll already be in the habit of having a higher monthly payment. So you refinance, the monthly payment drops, and you're like, woo, look at all this cash.
Yeah.
Go to Canada,
Well, and what you're seeing too, to your point, Paula, you're also seeing banks and credit unions are coming up with devices again in a higher interest rate market to try to get you to either do a refinance, which could be an awful idea, or to buy the new home because people are going, oh, interest rates are high, I probably don't want to. And there is a cool product that I'm finally seeing again. I saw it at the beginning of my career and I'm starting to see it again, which is you pay a small fee and instead of refinancing your house, it just readjusts the rest of the mortgage and the rest of the table with the remaining years on your mortgage to the lower interest rate. That is we used to call it a rate and term mortgage. Different companies have different terms for it now. Yes, you're going to pay a fee for that, But the good thing is, if you know anything about how amortization tables work, that's where the win
Yeah.
is. The win
Right.
is
You don't have to restart that clock.
yeah, if you've got a 30-year loan and you refinance your loan after the first 10 years, you didn't pay 8% or whatever it was. You paid like 40% or 35 or for what, some monster number. Here you still get to keep the same mortgage but lower the rest of the interest you're going to pay, which could be tons and tons of money. So look for those if you can find them.
Right. Well, and also that's going to depend on how long you've held the mortgage. Because if you've held the mortgage for 2 years, you're not that deep into the amortization clock.
Yeah.
So it would make less of a difference. But yeah, absolutely. If you've held that mortgage for 8 years, you don't want to restart the clock. No way.
And you see people do that all the time. I saved 2%. No, you didn't. You spent a bunch.
So what's our answer for Siege? What's our final answer? It's maybe take money out of the brokerage account, but only if you first clarify what the goal of that brokerage account money is and how that goal will be met.
As we do with a lot of our answers, we're answering CJ's question with a question. What was that money for? And what happens to that goal if you do it? Assuming then that you've run those numbers incredibly conservatively and you can get away with it, maybe take half of the surplus and apply it toward the mortgage. And then I'm good with it myself.
Right. Well, so thank you, CJ, for the question. And congratulations on buying this property. And future congratulations on when you refi it and that interest rate drops. And then you're going to be even happier.
Cha-ching.